I was 7 years old when I first asked my grandmother about the marks on her face. 3 delicate lines on each cheek, raised slightly, like tiny rivers carved into her skin. I had traced them with my small fingers countless times, but I had never asked what they meant. She smiled at me that day, touched my face gently, and said, "These marks are not scars, my child. They are my story. They are my identity. They are proof that I belong." I did not understand then. But as I grew older, as I listened to the elders, as I learned the history of our people, I began to see African scarification was never about pain. It was never about vanity. It was a sacred language written on the body, a mark of identity, a rite of passage, a declaration to the world of who you are and where you belong. Come closer. Let me tell you the real meaning behind these marks. Scarification, the intentional marking of the skin through cutting, branding, or burning, was practiced across many parts of Africa. The Yoruba of Nigeria, the Dinka of South Sudan, the Nuba of Sudan, the Karo of Ethiopia, the Mercy, the Hausa, the Igbo, and many other peoples practiced this ancient art. But it was not the same everywhere. Each culture had its own patterns, its own meanings, its own reasons. Some marks indicated ethnic identity. Some marked passage into adulthood. Some celebrated beauty. Some denoted status or achievement. In traditional African societies, before passports and birth certificates, before written records and photographs, scarification was how you declared your identity. It was how people knew which family you belonged to, which village you came from, which clan claimed you. These marks were not hidden. They were displayed proudly on the face, on the arms, on the chest, places where they could be seen, where they could tell your story without you speaking a word. Our elders understood something profound. The body is not just flesh. The body is a canvas, and what you write upon it can carry meaning far deeper than any words spoken aloud. Now let me tell you why African peoples practiced scarification. There are 3 reasons woven together like threads in cloth: spiritual, cultural, and practical. First, the spiritual reason. In many African spiritual traditions, scarification was believed to connect a person to their ancestors, to the divine, to the spiritual forces that govern life. Our elders taught that when the skin is marked in sacred patterns, when the body is transformed through ritual cutting, something spiritual happens. The person is no longer just born. They are made. They are initiated. They cross from one state of being into another. Among some peoples, scarification marked the transition from childhood to adulthood. When a young person endured the pain of the marks without crying out, they proved they were ready to carry the responsibilities of an adult. The scars were evidence of their courage, their endurance, their readiness to face life's hardships. The marks were also believed to protect. Some patterns were thought to ward off evil spirits, to prevent disease, to bring blessings from the ancestors. The body, marked in the right way, became a shield against harm. In this way, scarification was not just decoration. It was consecration. The marked body was a sacred body, connected to forces beyond the physical world, protected by patterns passed down through generations. Second, the cultural reason. Beyond the spiritual, scarification served a critical cultural purpose. It created and maintained identity. In a world where many different ethnic groups lived close to each other, where communities interacted, traded, sometimes clashed, you needed to know who belonged where. The marks on a person's face or body told you immediately, this person is Yoruba, this person is Nuba, this person is from my clan or from another. This was especially important in times of conflict or in large gatherings. You could identify friend from stranger, ally from potential threat, simply by looking at the marks they carried. But it was more than that. The marks also created a sense of belonging, of pride, of shared identity. When everyone in your community bore the same patterns, you were bound together. You were family. You were one. And for individuals, the marks were a declaration. I am not ashamed of who I am. I am not trying to hide. I carry my identity openly, boldly, permanently. Third, the practical reason. And then there is the practical side, the side rooted in survival and social order. In some societies, scarification served as a permanent record. If a child was lost, if someone was captured in war, if people were displaced, the marks on their body would eventually lead them back to their people. Because those marks could not be erased, could not be lost, could not be faked. Scarification also marked important life events and achievements. When a warrior killed an enemy, he might receive a mark. When a woman gave birth to twins, she might be marked to honor that blessing. When someone completed an initiation rite, they were marked to show they had passed the test. These marks created a visual history on the body. Anyone who knew how to read them could look at a person and know their story, their age, their achievements, their lineage, their place in society. In this way, the body became a living document, a personal archive that traveled with you wherever you went. There is a proverb among the Yoruba people that speaks to the permanence of identity. Ilayomo, ilayer, mo, ilayer. It means a child is known by their tribal marks. This proverb teaches us that identity is not something you claim with words alone. Identity is something visible, something recognizable, something that cannot be hidden or denied. The proverb also reminds us that we do not create ourselves in isolation. We are shaped by our lineage, by our community, by the marks, literal or figurative, that connect us to those who came before. This is the wisdom. You are not just an individual. You are part of a chain. And the marks you carry, whether on your body or in your spirit, declare to the world where you come from and who your people are. Let me tell you more about my grandmother and her marks. As I grew older, she told me the story of how she received them. She was 14 years old. The whole village gathered. The elders prepared the sacred tools, sharp blades made from iron, blessed and purified. She sat on a stool in the center of the circle. The master artist, an elder woman who had marked hundreds of faces before, approached. She sang as she worked, songs of courage, songs of identity, songs to call the ancestors to witness. My grandmother told me she felt every cut, 3 lines on each cheek, deliberate and precise. The blood came. The pain was sharp, but she did not cry, because to cry would shame her family, would suggest she was not ready. When it was done, the elders ululated. The women danced. My grandmother was no longer a girl. She was a woman. The marks declared it. And for the rest of her life, those marks connected her to her people. When she traveled to distant markets, when she moved to the city, when she was surrounded by strangers, she would meet someone with similar marks, and instantly, they were family. I also remember an elder man in our village who had marks on his arms and chest, marks he had received as a warrior. Each mark represented a battle fought, an enemy defeated, a danger survived. He did not speak much about them. But when the young men gathered around him, eager to hear stories of bravery, he would trace the marks with his fingers and say, "These are not boasts. These are reminders. Every mark cost something. Every scar teaches something." And the young men would listen, understanding that the marks were not just about glory. They were about sacrifice, about survival, about the price of protecting your people. I also learned that not everyone received marks. In some communities, marks were only for certain families, certain clans. In others, everyone was marked. The patterns varied, some simple, some elaborate, but always they meant something. And when colonizers came, when they saw these marks and called them primitive, when they tried to shame people into stopping the practice, many of our people hid their marks, covered them, even tried to erase them. But some refused. They said, "These marks are who we are. We will not erase ourselves." Today, scarification is rare. In most parts of Africa, it has largely disappeared. Some people see this as progress. They say scarification was barbaric, that it caused unnecessary pain, that it marked people permanently without their consent. since many marks were given in childhood. And there is truth in that concern. Any practice that causes pain, especially to children, deserves careful examination. But here's what I want you to consider. In moving away from scarification entirely, have we also lost something? We have lost a visible declaration of identity. In a globalized world where everyone dresses the same, speaks the same languages, consumes the same media, how do we know who we are? How do we declare where we come from? Some modern Africans are returning to scarification in new ways. Not the traditional childhood markings, but voluntary scarification as adults. They choose patterns that honor their heritage, that reconnect them to their roots, that declare, I am proud of where I come from. Others find different ways to carry identity, through tattoos, through clothing, through language, through storytelling. The method changes, but the need remains the same. We need to belong. We need to be recognized. We need to know our story and have others recognize it too. And perhaps that is the real lesson of scarification. Not the specific practice, but the principle behind it. Identity matters. Heritage matters. The marks we carry, whether physical or spiritual, connect us to something larger than ourselves. In a world that tells us we can be anyone, maybe we need to remember the wisdom of our ancestors. We are not just anyone. We are specific. We come from specific places, specific peoples, specific stories. And there is power in claiming that, in marking it, in declaring it boldly. I think about my grandmother's marks often. She has been gone many years, but I can still see them clearly. 3 lines on each cheek, raised and proud. I do not have those marks. My generation was not marked, but I carry them in a different way, in my memory, in my stories, in the pride I feel when I speak of where I come from. And I wonder, what marks do we carry today? Not on our skin, but in our hearts. What declares to the world who we are and where we belong, because the human need has not changed. We still need identity. We still need community. We still need to know we are part of something larger, something that existed before us and will continue after us. The marks may fade, the practices may change, but the longing remains to be known, to be recognized, to belong. So now, I ask you, did your elders have scarification marks? Do you know what they meant and what stories they told? And here is my second question. If you could mark your body with your identity, with your story, what would those marks say about who you are? Tell me your story. Tell me your culture. Tell me about the marks, visible or invisible, that connect you to your heritage. And if this story opened your eyes to the deeper meaning behind African traditions, if it made you see scarification not as primitive, but as profound, then stay with us. Follow Roots of Africa, where we tell the real stories, where we honor the old ways, and where we remember that identity is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be marked, celebrated, and passed down. May you always know who you are. May you carry your identity with pride, and may you never forget the marks, visible or not, that connect you to those who came before. Until we meet again by the fireside, go well.